Alright guys, Glock 17. So I got back into Glocks again. I had a Glock 21 from my previous video that I sold, and on the previous video actually I preferred the Springfield Armory over the Glock, and that hasn't changed. But the Glocks are not bad guns. People say they're indestructible, but that's not true. Glocks fail like any other gun does. There's plenty of other guns that could outlast the Glock. Really, it all depends on how you take care of your gun. But I actually decided to go with the Glock 17 just because recently there was this the whole shooting ordeal happened, and all the guns skyrocketed in price, and Glocks became sold out everywhere. And because I sold my last Glock that I had, which was a Glock 21, I actually wanted to just have one. So I did pay a little premium for this. Out of the Glocks, if you're watching this video and you know Glocks and you know that this is obviously a Gen 2, this is my favorite Glock generation because it doesn't have that finger groove, which makes the grip a little bit slimmer. The problem I had with Glocks was that the grip was just a little too big, especially on the 21. The Glock 17 a little less, but it was a little bulky. So the Gen 2 kind of cures that problem. The only other issue I have with the Glock was the grip angle. And this one is, all it is practice really, but I'm so used to the 1911s that when I go to point this naturally, it just aims a little bit higher, and I have to point it down just a little bit. As far as that goes, Glock's a great gun. I'm not a big fan of the no safety features on this thing, except for that little trigger safety, which actually deactivates when I put this 4-pound trigger spring in. If I put this 4-pound trigger spring in there, then the trigger won't pop out all the way, so that you don't need to press the little trigger safety. You can just pull on the side and it'll go off. That's why I took that off. And maybe when I shoot some steel, then I might put that back in. But I decided not to put that in. I had the 5-pound trigger spring in, the striker spring in there. I did put the 6-pound trigger spring in. This is the stock 5-pound, and I did put the reduced power plunger safety firing pin block spring in there. So it is a lot smoother. And then I did obviously get the Glock 3.5 trigger connect. Just a little heads up. I don't know. A lot of people kind of misinterpret this. A 3.5 pound trigger connect does not make your trigger 3.5 pounds. It makes it about 5.5, opposed to stock 6.5. With all the other springs in there, except for the striker fire spring, it'll drop it down to about 4.5, which is what I have mine in right now. And I think that's the perfect for as far as carry goes. Just you want that trigger to reset enough where your little trigger safety here does pop out and engage. With a 4-pound, it doesn't do that. This Glock has been modified quite a bit by me, using my handy dandy Dremel. This is actually the most useful tool I've ever purchased, and I'm getting every single penny out of this tool here. I did the whole polish work on it. I grinded some of the Sierra just a little bit, just to make it a little bit more crisper as far as when the trigger pulls. There's only so much you could do with Glock unless you get a new trigger system, which I didn't want to do, because that trigger pull has to pull back the striker just a little bit before it lets it go. So that's why the striker fire spring does reduce that trigger pull to about 3.5 pounds. But I wouldn't keep it in there. You might have an issue with light primer strikes, especially with that low power spring. I don't think I would have an issue with low primer strikes, especially because I reload and I try to use soft primers. But yeah, with some ammo, you might have a little bit of problems with the light primer strikes. More than that, the only problem I had with this spring, like I said before, was when I went and pulled the trigger, I went bang. When I went to go let it go, this wouldn't come forward because the spring was too light. So it wouldn't go forward, and when it does pop forward, this little trigger won't activate. It did not activate. So basically, it was See how it's supposed to push forward and the trigger comes forward? and it goes up just enough where now even if you pull the trigger, it won't go back, and you have to pull that trigger safety to pull it back. Well, with this spring in there, what would happen is it would reset right about there. So now you could just pull it back from any angle. Like, you wouldn't have to press that middle thing. You just pull it back here and fire the gun. A couple of other stuff I did to this was I added a magwell and a beaver tail grip, which actually helps a lot. The two issues I had with Glocks was the grip angle and well, the biggest issue I had with Glock was the grip angle, really. But this kind of changes the grip angle a little bit, and with enough practice, I actually like it. As far as, I listed all the cons. Now the pros, this is why I'm keeping this Glock 17. The parts are cheap. Talk about cheap. I built a 1911. I built so many guns out there, but none as cheap to build as the Glock. The full spring kit was like $10. The trigger connect kit was like not even $20. All the rest of that I polished out. What's polished? 50 cents. The magwell, this thing costed me like maybe $30. The beaver tail costed me about $30. But after that, it was all done. And then the sights I painted in myself, and these things are actually great once you get them painted in. It's a little bright right now, but I painted them with the glow-on sights, and what happens is they glow really bright. I'm not sure if you can see that. And usually when I leave it out in this kind of sunlight, it'll charge by itself. By the time it's nighttime, it'll keep a glow for about 2 days. So instead of changing out these sights, I ended up just painting them in, which works for me, as far as what I use it for. I was gonna build a speed gun with the Gen 2s. There's only one plug there, or one pin, so I couldn't put a rail on there. I might get this beveled and put a sight on here maybe, or I might just keep it the way it is. A list of mods I did. There's not that many really, but it makes the gun so different. Even with the little bit of mods that I did do. First thing I did was I took out that safety block and I polished that out. And that actually helps out a lot. And I polished right here as well, so that when it does ride up on there, it's smoother. I also grind this down just a little bit, because when I put that 6-pound trigger spring there, I pulled it back too much and just set too high where the slide wouldn't come back on. So I grinded the top of this just a little bit, not to the point where it's not going to activate this safety block, but grinded it down just a little bit. I angled it myself with the Dremel. Everything else has been polished out like a mirror finish. And what I had to end up doing was, there's a 6-pound trigger spring right back here that I replaced. This helps out quite a bit. The reduced power plunger spring goes into that right there, and that makes this pushing a lot easier. What I had to do was where the trigger connect is right here, and where the trigger goes into, it was kind of rough. Even when I polished it out, it would sit, and when it goes in and it slides on each other, it was rough. I could feel it by just doing this, pulling back on the trigger and just feeling it like that. So if you pull back on the trigger and you see how that moves against each other right there? Well, it was kind of rough. And that actually affected my trigger quite a bit. A lot more than I thought. So I took that off, and then I actually grinded it down. Well, not grinded. I used a metal wire wheel, and I made that as smooth as I could. I didn't want to grind any of it. I used this right here. This little wire brush wheel, and I probably pumped that up to like 34,000 RPM, and I just started working on the metal, try to smooth it as much as possible. And then I polished it, obviously, with some semi-chrome. Under the polish that a lot of people use is Flitz. I've used that too. It's great, but semi-chrome's lasting me forever. This stuff's pretty good. I use this a lot. And the end results with the few mods that I did, which was that trigger connect, the trigger spring, and the plunger reduced power spring, was ended up with a great trigger. The Glock, actually, I never had a problem with their trigger. I liked their trigger. Their reset was good. It was a little bit on the heavy side, but that was still fine with me. I had no problems with their triggers. The reset is wonderful on Glocks. I love their reset. I see how it, let me see if I, okay. You see how that's pulled? And that's reset, and that's bang. So, even with the stock trigger connect, the reset was good. But with that trigger connect, I guess it made that reset a little better, which is never had an issue with issue with it. What I did improve was that first take up right here, this part right here, with that 6-pound trigger spring and that reduced power plunger spring, this becomes like nothing. My pinky here, and I can just barely push on it, and I take up that slack. So that's what that fixed up. The trigger connect and the polish drop, what that helped out with was when I did take it up, from here you're starting to pull that striker back. I didn't even want to fire that gun; it just went off. So that's what that helped. It made it smooth where I start pulling it back, and it's consistent through the break, which is great. I said with that 4-pound striker spring, this becomes ridiculously light. I wouldn't recommend it. And the only reason why I did so much to this gun was because it was so cheap to fix it up. You know, and since I had a Glock anyways, and my first Glock I didn't really do much to it, I decided to go about putting some random stuff on here. The beaver tail safety, wonderful addition, wonderful. It mates perfectly to the frame. And that checkering is really rough. It's really good on the grip. The reason why I like this so much is because I can get the highest grip on here, as high as I could go, and bring my hand up as high as I could go, and I won't get that bite from the side if I pull the trigger. And it's natural pointing. As soon as you pull it in and put the web of your hand where that goes, then you put your finger straight, it's gonna point to where you want to shoot. So I bring it out, I bring it in, and it points right where I want it to shoot. A little bit more practice would actually be a lot better for me as far as this gun, the Glock, goes, because I haven't shot the Glock all that much. But because I have experience with 1911s and the Springfield Armories, I'm still spot on with the Glock. I could still get a quarter-size group from 14 feet, 15 feet. That's about all I have to say. Just to recap, Glocks are pretty solid guns. I'm not bashing it in any way. This actually became my favorite toy gun, just because I could get scratches on it and I wouldn't really care about it. Glocks were affordable guns before the gun craze went and happened. I don't know why so many people bought these up, and there are so many other guns that are just as good. But that's the gist of it. I'm not sure how informative this video was, but hopefully you guys did catch something on that. I think it's a must for a Glock to have that 3.5 trigger connect in there. And this beaver tail and magwell is awesome. I can't recommend it enough. There's no permanent attachments. This is on there by that trigger group spring trigger group pin, and this is on there by the little plug in the back. And overall, it's a great gun. So this is, my reason why I actually bought another Glock, is just to modify it and have a little fun with it. This will never replace my 1911, but at the same time, it's such a popular gun. I just decided to get one. And I'm one of those big fans of collecting. Alrighty, well, thank you for watching. Alright, please give me a thumbs up and leave a comment. Alright, bye bye.